Bob is, somebody called him the startup whisperer, which I thought was awesome. I mean, like, if you're going to put that on a gravestone, like, that's pretty darn good. He hails from Cambridge, Mass, from Boston, and he's involved with MIT Venture Mentoring program that has gone nationally. He's been with them for about 10 years, I think. He is an anchor and a foundational player in the Pipeline Fellowship program up in Kansas City. Folks in the room that have participated in Pipeline. Okay, so thank these guys when you spend some time with Bob, because they were like, oh my gosh, yes, bring him to town. He meets founders where they are, specifically getting them to think hard and important and frankly freeing thoughts about how to grow their business at that go-to-market, get your customers, find your ideal customer stage. So he's going to spend some time with us talking that through. I have only gotten to know him first by Zoom and now in person the last day or so. And I can tell you this is going to be a lot of fun. He paces, he moves, matches energy if you like, if you can. And with that, I introduce Bob Jones.
That intro, I think all that's left to say is thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. So, good morning. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you guys are here. I have a kind of an old-fashioned idea that if I'm going to ask for your attention for 90 minutes, which is about 10 times the attention span of most entrepreneurs, is that a butterfly? I should try to deliver some content that you find useful that makes the time worth your while. And as long as I'm having old-fashioned ideas, I think I will do a better job of that if I know a little bit about you. Now, I read the sheet that Mary Beth sent me about those of you who are finalists. So I know a little bit about your Atlanta-based business and a little bit about your community healthcare-based business, the analytics that you're working on, and so forth. But most of you I don't know anything about. And when I buttonholed Emma and Jacob a few minutes ago and said, why are you here? I thought maybe the answer is, well, we're homeless and it's hot outside. But they said, no, we're business owners. So would one or the other of you tell me about health in a minute or two, a little bit about your business? Yes.
Okay. My name's Emma. I started my interior design business about 6 months ago. So I primarily focus on residential interior design, helping people create beautiful and functional spaces. And interior design is my passion, so that's why I started.
Who contracts for your services? I think right
Primarily homeowners, but I'm getting into the commercial side a little bit more. So anyone who has an office space, coffee shop,
and how do you let the world know about that?
I try to do that through social media.
And what's broke that you fix, given that the world has other people who do this?
Yes. So I try to bring a more transitional, modern design style to business because not a lot of people are doing that. People here really love the farmhouse, game style, and that's fine. It's great, but I try to bring more of a coastal theme, I guess, for Canada.
Okay, so if we were to restate this, and forgive me, I may mangle it.
Okay.
You would say the prevailing design ethos here is based on its agricultural roots. There's a lot of fondness for the farmhouse modality, but it's a vital community. You bring in a lot of new people, and many of them find those design choices to be no longer satisfactory and are interested in more of a coastal approach to this. And that's the itch you scratch.
Correct.
Did I get that right? That's all. Thank you. Jacob? That's a tough act to follow.
I think it's a tough act to follow, though, and I got to follow all the time.
Well, you have my respect.
I'm a brand designer and brand strategist. I own Stories My Branding, which is a branding agency here in Utah. We help businesses better communicate with their customers through strategic brand identity creation, helping them build a persona that attracts and resonates with their customers.
Now, Jacob, let's say for the sake of argument that I don't know what branding is and therefore don't know what brand strategy is. I can't think of it, given that, I can't think of any reason why anybody would can't do it. So what's the need that you meet that would cause them to say, please take my cash?
I help businesses make more money by increasing their audience retention rating. So bringing their audience in a relationship with the business instead of a transactional function where they just purchase a product or a service. They now want to get involved with the company deeper, stay connected, and build a relationship with that business. That's what branding is all about.
So maybe you would argue that the best source of additional revenue comes from the people who are already your customers. And if you have a good, strong brand, you retain those customers. You have lower customer acquisition costs and higher.
That is correct. Yeah, the data shows that a strong, nice brand increases your gross revenue by 20% on average.
So would it be safe to say that your clients make more money because you help them build a stronger brand, lower their customer acquisition costs, and increase their customer retention?
That's exactly correct.
You're welcome. I'm available. All right. Well, I often try to start these things. What did I just do? When I ask in as diplomatic a way as possible, who are you and what do you want? And we kind of did that. I mean, there's some of you I knew when you walked in the door because we had that before thing. I'm going to try in the course of this talk to provide a couple of tips to help you find your customers. We do it right, succeed with your business. But I think that the traditional academic paradigm, it doesn't work very well, particularly not with entrepreneurs. You know, they articulate this lofty principle. Everybody writes it down. Nobody knows what they're talking about. They sort of sit there glassy-eyed. And then eventually, maybe they'll offer you a few examples. I'm going to do it the other way around. And I'm going to offer you a couple of examples of stuff I've been intimately involved with. And we'll try to boil out a couple of principles. And as you can probably already tell, I sort of don't do monologues. Right? There'll be places where I'm going to absolutely want you to get engaged. So this morning will be an equal opportunity embarrassment program. And I will lead by example, probably by embarrassing myself. I always forget to do this, and Mary Beth did a better job, but you guys realize that we are all misfits, right? I mean, that's what entrepreneurs are. It's essentially people who don't fit anywhere else. They say they do this because they love it. It's not true. They do it because they can't do anything else. Because they have to do it. I cannot work for a not-head boss. Right? I cannot sit through endless meetings where all we do is yam or away and get nothing done. Right? And so we are all misfits. Well, I am too. I did a stretch, boutique consulting firm, and after a while, I thought going in it would be fun to offer people some insight, counsel them, and help them do better. And after a while, I realized I'm talking to people who are doing it. I'd rather be doing it. So I bailed. I did take a gig for a while at a company that was publicly traded on the Hong Kong exchange. It had lost money for 23 consecutive years. You buy it, you're buying the beer.
I was like, oh,
Somebody lost money for 23 straight years, which you can only do if Grandpa in Hong Kong writes a check every year and says, okay, sweetie, you can continue to conquer America. One day Grandpa died, the board said enough. And we could have a much longer talk about what it does to a corporate culture when every year the company loses money and the employees get a raise and a promotion. So I had to fire 75 people and do some pretty draconian things. It had nothing to do with innovation, it's just block and tackle. I had a couple normal jobs. I went to school, and something that's really important to me, I made my living as a musician for 1 year. Where I said, this is something I'm never going to stop doing, but it's a terrible way to make a living. And I broke down business school, but I'm still playing. Played this past Saturday night, got 3 gigs coming up the next couple of weeks. I also am part of a really nice group of people that volunteers to play in things in homeless shelters. And there are all manner of regulations about not taking pictures of the residents or so forth. But this was one at Thanksgiving. I called them up in advance and said, "You guys need a really nerdy guitar player to sit in the corner and play nonviolent music while you're sitting your best." They said, "Well, that's exactly the job description." I sat in the corner and played, you know, et cetera, for a while they fed 700 people. So an active sort of in that world as well. But all kidding aside, this has a lot to do with my view of management models, not hierarchical, it's collaborative. Because a good working ensemble sounds way bigger than it actually is. And if the parts gel, I don't play drums, but I know a good drummer from a bad drummer, right? And so I don't mind leading the band, but I don't tell other people what to do, to be honest with you. And that permeates a lot of what I do in building teams. Okay, a couple of years ago, actually it was at the end of the previous recession, the Wall Street Journal did an analysis of who failed and who succeeded. And they sort of fell into two buckets. Those who succeeded anyway, they were either cost leaders who aggressively cut their costs. That's not you. They were innovators. You will love this. They focused on building their brand. What they asked was, how is your end user just satisfied? Because that's where the opportunity is. And it's tempting if you have a technology background to say, well, we need artificial intelligence, heuristics, and algorithms, and et cetera, but not necessarily. There's 50 kids in town who want a bicycle, and there's no bicycle shop. Might be an opportunity. So some of what we're going to focus on here is this. I'm going to make a couple bold assertions, and I hope to support them in the comments that follow. Your business might survive, but it's not going to prosper until you understand, what are you really selling? Are you selling security? Are you selling vanity? What is it you're really selling? I'll flesh that out for you as you go forward. And who wants it? It's not enough for you to think it's really cool. It's not enough for your neighbors and your family to think it's really cool. You have to find a community of people who say, I want this. In fact, if you're providing it, would you please take my money? And that leads logically to you find them. And there's a few fundamental questions that I think are deceptively simple that you could ask about your venture. What's the unmet need that we address? I annoyed both of you with variations of that question, right? What's broken that you fix? And who cares? And that's not a rhetorical question. I mean, specifically, who cares? Is it people who've lost a family member to diabetes? Is it, right? Specifically, who cares? Who's trying to fix the problem? How many of them are out there? And will they spend money? Say, for example, I've often thought I might try to make a living counseling entrepreneurs. They don't have any money. How do I find them? How do I let them know about what we're doing? All right, not broad-based, narrowcast. I'll elaborate. What are they doing about it now? If they're not trying to solve the problem now, guess what? It's not a problem. What are they trying to do now? How are they spending their money and their resources? And why will they think what I have is better? And it's not enough for me to tell you why I think it's better. If I talk to 10 entrepreneurs, 11 of them why they think what they have is better. I don't care. What I want to know is, why do your customers think it's better? And with all respect, you may well not know. So, and exactly who's going to pay me, and can I make any money? I've gone down the path a couple of times of things I thought were businesses, and they weren't. They were awesome, socially useful, philanthropic ventures. One or two of them were really cool hobbies, not business. You have to make more than you spend sustainably to have a business. Okay, sidebar. if I talk to 10 entrepreneurs and say, what is it you want the most? 9 of them will say, well, I'm brilliant, my team's brilliant, my product's brilliant, all I need is money. If you ever ask yourself, what do the people who have money care about? What do they worry about? And how can you help them? Well, believe it or not, a prevailing emotion is fear. Because they know if they give money to 10 of you, statistically, 9 of you are going to go bust. You might be charming, lovable, kind to animals, doesn't matter. Statistically, most of you are going to go bust. So if I'm handing out the money, my top priority is to figure out you have a chance. Because if only 7 of you go bust, I'm ahead. I like playing Major League Baseball. There's a non-negotiable requirement. You have to have customers. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have money. You don't have to be good looking. Your customers, people will think you're smart. You will make money. And if you make enough money, at least in Los Angeles, they will think you're good looking. I lived out there for So, fundamental questions. Do you have any customers? Will you have them? Do you even know you need them? And then let's get a little granular. How will you get them? Let's say you find them. What are they worth? Customer's worth $1, and you need to make $1,000 in order to be cash positive. You need 1,000 customers. How are you going to find them? How long will it take? And how much money do you need to get you from here to there? That's the beginnings of a plan. And it's just rooted in some real fundamentals. Hi, Tracy. Good luck on your call. Yes, ma'am. Jessica.
Can you elaborate on that question? Do you even know that you need them?
Okay. Mary Beth mentioned that I do a lot of work at MIT. That's a nice way of saying I'm surrounded by propeller heads who come up with this amazing exotic technology that solves a problem that nobody has. And they think it's really cool. And I look at it, but you know, come to think of it, I think it's really cool. And they don't know it. We had one venture came in, it was very early stage, lasted for all of 1 meeting. I broke his heart, and that was the end of the relationship. He liked robotics. He had invented a robotic way to make curry. Carousel, it had blocks of meat, it had the spices, etc., and it would drop the things into essentially a crock pot at the right time, for the right amount of time, with sensors that it come to the right temperature, etc. He was of Indian background. He liked curry, and he also liked to play World of Warcraft or something. So what struck him as utterly awesome was to create this robotic thing that would make his curry while he played. I said, well, let's say hypothetically that we find 1,000 people who want it. Where would they go to buy it? He said, Whole Foods. I said, okay, who would prepare the cuts of meat? Oh, Whole Foods. Well, the fact is, while I was running that soy foods company, I sold a lot of tofu to Whole Foods. I know those guys. You're dreaming. Right? And by the way, have you thought a little bit about what the cost of goods are versus just finding something you throw in the microwave? Anyway, he had no clue. Really smart guy. Just had not ever oriented himself toward the world of commerce. That's what I mean. Based on the few of you that I've talked with so far, this is not really an issue for you guys. You seem more grounded in reality than some of these propeller heads that I work with. Have an okay answer? Okay, I think you want 2 descriptors. You would like to be unique and you would like to be important. And obviously the sweet spot is both. So examples. Well, air is probably high on the importance scale, low on the unique scale. And when I talked about this couple of months ago. They all burst into tears over this next one, but I think are probably unique. Most people would think they're not important. So you have to ask yourself, is there a way to build a business? Error. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I used to be in the radio business.
Sorry.
I used to be in the radio business.
Yes. Arguably, that's not the air you breathe, but you are definitely selling air time. How about selling the air you breathe? Sorry?
For healthcare.
Okay.
Oxygen bars.
Oxygen, yep, oxygen bars, yep. Have you guys ever gone scuba diving?
Yeah.
I did my checkout dive off Catalina Island, California. And diving amongst the kelp beds, it's like being in an underwater redwood forest. It's pretty astonishing. I got a little overly enthusiastic, found myself down about 100 feet. And then I checked over the days and thought, oh, I would have paid a lot for air at that point, right? And similarly, if I said, I can tell you about a business where your cost of goods is 12 or 15 cents and you can sell it for $5. You say, who's my customer? Well, our parents. Right? So the moral of the story, yes, I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but you need to find out who's going to find your offering to be unique and important. Because in and of itself, I would dispute that any of these things has any intrinsic value. It's important to somebody. Somebody who will pay you. Find that somebody, tell them about it, take their money. Simple is not the same as easy. Okay, this is not necessarily easy, but fundamentally it's simple. And I think a lot of us, particularly those of you who suffered through graduate school, tend to obscure the simplicity with too much over-analysis and overthinking. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's really important. Okay, a couple of examples. I'm sorry, a lot of my background's in healthcare, so the two examples I'm going to walk you through related to healthcare. So the background, I ended up joining a company in California that sold to hospitals. It had been about $200 million a year in revenue for 12 years, sleeping. And an entrepreneur came along, the fellow that started Caremark, if you're familiar with Caremark, Jim Sweeney, started Caremark, sold it back to put a bunch of money in. Went off to Alex Brown, bought it, and leverage buyout. Hired most of the senior managers, brought in people with some energy. Said, I'm going to take this thing up 50% in 3 years and then go public. Talk for you, and talk for you, and when we go public, vote. Very motivating. Really good idea. The division I ran made fluids for use in the IV. And we had stuff that we would make, the liter of fluid cost $3, we'd sell it for $7. Real profit. So I was managing essentially the breadbasket for the business. Unfortunately, there was this thing coming down the pike called managed care, and these three letters, HMO, we were not have a bad habit of going out lids off the garbage can, we was out there. And it came to my attention that this was going to go away. People were no longer going to pay that much more for something that was a little bit better. And it's going to threaten our plants. But well, there's no pressure or anything. But I got to find a new opportunity. And when I did, it represented potential repositioning of the company. And I learned that nobody in the country had done this before. This should be a gigantic red flag. But it was not. Because I had more testosterone in my brains. Forward. So here's the market need as it stood at the time. There were a number of patients out there in the world whose kidneys had failed, and they were on renal dialysis. Now, when your kidneys fail, you can no longer eliminate fluid. So you can't just casually do what most do. Part of what you benefit you get when you go in for dialysis, besides cleansing the impurities from your blood, it brings out the excess fluid. You are fluid restricted between those treatments. And then due to other medical functions that your kidneys do for you, however, you also become malnourished. And you need lifelong nutrition supplementation. And guess what? All of the supplements were liquids. I said, well, technical term for this, duh. So why don't we make something that's high in what they need and low in what they shouldn't have, and it's in the form of a nutrition bar? Well, that sounds like a no-brainer these days, but at that point, Brian Maxwell and his wife had just literally cooked up the power bar in their kitchen and sponsored the Berkeley women's track team. Berkeley said, "You kidding? Nobody's ever sponsored the women's track team. Sure, you could put power bar on their t-shirt." Anyway, this was a radical idea. We were ethical. We had to ask a fundamental question. Does stuff work? So we ran a clinical trial, even though we didn't have to, because in the food industry, it's not required. But we did. We did it through Kaiser Permanente, if you're familiar with the West Coast operation. Got the results published in a peer-reviewed journal. Bottom line was it worked. It made the patient's blood chemistry better, and the implication of that was it would extend their life. We said, okay, we're on to something here. We know how to do market research. We were all steeped in the pharmaceutical tradition. We know that the patients see a doctor for this, and they see a nurse for that, and their opinion leaders in anything fields. We know how to do this. Let's identify and contact the opinion leaders and said, what do you think? And the answer was always, which I thought this is awesome. So, well, would you recommend it for your patients? Yeah. How many of your patients? All of them. How many days a week would you recommend that they consume this? About $3 a bar. That sounds good. What do you think of our competition? Well, really, you don't have any. You're the only one that isn't a liquid. So we did a little math and said, hey, it's a good looking business. Well, let's dive in. So we developed the marketing materials. We brought in the photographers, did the beauty shot, set up a commission plan for the sales force, hauled them all in, walked them through the science, walked them through their commission plan, launched into the market, and completed that. With a miserable failure. We came in at less than 10% of our forecast, month after month after month. I did tell you this would be an equal opportunity embarrassment. So, your turn. You have to have seen this before. Please be quiet. What did I do wrong? You can't just sit there and mumble. You have to raise your hand. Go ahead. Tell everybody loud enough that they can hear. What did I do wrong?
You didn't ask your customer how they felt about it.
Did you guys hear that? No. I didn't. Say it again.
You didn't ask your customer how they felt about it or how it tasted.
Well, I did ask the doctors and I did ask the nurses.
You didn't ask the person that's consuming.
Oh, I didn't ask the person that's consuming it. Well, that's a pretty radical idea. We did ask the clinicians, but they don't buy it and they don't eat it. We were used to a world where if you bring your kid into the pediatrician and he's got an ear infection, I just eat it. The doc says, well, it's around 7 days. Stuff says the kid doesn't like it. That's the technical medical term. Because he's going to get better. So, and if you were a sales rep for that outfit, Doc wrote for it. My job's done. But you're quite right. We didn't talk to the patients. And what we found was that they didn't want it and they couldn't afford it. So why didn't they want it? Just improve their health and extended their life. Why would they not want it?
Tasted bad.
I beg your pardon?
Tasted bad.
One more time.
Tasted bad.
Well, that was part of it. It turns out that when your kidneys fail, your palate shifts And protein, which was one of the key things you needed, tastes like boiled meat. Well, we tasted it, we thought it was fine. We weren't the customer. Yeah. But that was only a part of it. And actually it was a small part. It was a much bigger part. Jacob.
Did it make them thirsty and they had to drink more?
That was another small part of it. Very good. Yes.
Was it that they didn't trust it because it was a solid instead of a liquid because of what they were used to?
You know, I didn't find a single person who raised that question. But I didn't find a single prospective customer who raised that question. The fundamental question is who develops kidney failure?
So when
44% of them get there from a lifetime of mismanaging their high blood pressure. 33% of them get there from a lifetime of mismanaging their diabetes. So 3/4 of my target audience had a lifetime of not taking care of themselves. Why would they start now? And also, once your kidneys fail and you go on dialysis, a well-meaning social worker will come to you and say, well, you have to be here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 until noon. So I'll get you on public aid. You don't have money. If you do have $5, you're going to spend it on beer and cigarettes, not my product. So there was a fundamental mismatch right at the beginning. We did not see. Oh, there was one more major issue. Where could they buy it? We'd been selling it to hospitals. This had to be sold in retail pharmacies. We'd never dealt with retail pharmacies. And if you ever want to see somebody bust out laughing, walk into a retail pharmacy and say, I have a product you've never heard of from a company you've never done business with for a group of patients who don't want it and don't have any money, and I'd like you to stock it. And if they're polite, they will say, well, how do you spell fat chance? So we could not get retail distribution. Well, it spoiled my whole day. And one of them, it spoiled a lot of people's days because we were on track to show Wall Street that we had the track record and the team and the credibility to be a good IPO. And my failure meant that a bunch of colleagues who were looking forward to a wealth creating event were going to be disappointed. And we had senior management meetings, probably a quarter the size of the group that we have here, but everybody go around the table. They say, well, Bob, how's your business doing? You're forecast to do $400,000 this month. How'd you do? And I say, 30. I say, excuse me, 30. I mean, you know, I did the usual, right? It's just taking longer to get started. We need the traction and, you know, it's not true. It was like a slow motion train wreck. It just went on and on and on. For a year. Ruined a year of my life. So what do we do about it? Well, you know, we learned about inside sales. We said, you know, 75% of the people don't want it. There's still a quarter of them that do want it. Let's find them. Let's put notices in publication. Somebody ought to pay for it. You probably know that Medicaid is a state-by-state program, and therefore you know that the chances that Kansas and Nebraska have the same rules. So this was like 40 consecutive root canals. We got it done and said, this is just a terrible way to make a living. And we found a company that specialized in selling to those patients who did want it, and we sold the business to them. It was the crown jewel for them because we had this robust clinical support and et cetera. And they had a conduit to those customers. And we got out for about $1 more than we spent. 30 seconds from when you get away, right? Exactly. Unfortunately, I managed to overachieve in my other areas. We did have the IPO and I was released from the doghouse. But this experience burned some lessons into my soul. There with you today. But let's go on. Let's talk about another one. So just to show you that entrepreneurship is a form of mental illness. I went on and launched 2 more. and had rather much success with the next couple. I was in Southern California, and I got to know the doctor at Harvard Med School. And turned out we had overlapping interests. And after a while, they said, you know, what this guy's doing is kind of appealing to us. He called me up and said, you want to start a company together? Absolutely. There's just nobody worse to start a company with than one doctors. And the smart ones are the worst. Because they think they know a lot about something, they must know a lot about everything. It's not true. So I love you guys. You're going to be at the conference in San Antonio in a couple of weeks. Bring your jeans. I'll buy you tacos and a tequila, but I'm not starting a company with you. About 6 months later, they called me again. Said, we've raised some seed capital, contingent on finding a CEO. Between the investors and us, we've only found one person in the country that's taken this kind of technology and put it on the shelves in Walgreens. So would you meet our investors? Why not? So I flew diagonal across the country. One thing led to another, excuse me, and we did sort of it. I was in 40 countries. So we went through all of their current projects. I said, these things are going to bear fruit in 3 years. And I'm too neurotic to babysit a bunch of scientists for 3 years. And a couple of them are going to turn into vaccines. Raise your hand if you know anything about a vaccine. Nobody raised their hand. All right, we're not doing it. So we went through a sort of triage process. And I ended up getting them into the field of diabetes based on some stuff I happen to already know about people who have diabetes. Raise your hand if you know somebody who's got diabetes. So, at the time, the number of people who had been diagnosed was 10 million. It's about double. And the prevailing attitude is if you've got it, you're going to keep it forever. There's some evidence that that may not be true these days. But at the time, this was manageable but incurable. So the goal of managing your diabetes was to keep the fluctuations in your blood glucose within a reasonable bandwidth. Too high is bad, too low is bad. Keep it in the sort of optimal range and do what you can to do that. And most of these folks had the problem of their blood glucose getting too high. And they would inject insulin to lower it. Perfectly reasonable, unless they overdid it, in which case they would drop too low. So what does that mean? Well, if it stays too high for too long, that's a major cause for blindness, kidney failure, and amputation of your extremities. Feet, for example. Bad. But it takes a while to develop, and arguably can be treated over time. If it drops too low, frankly, you faint. This is bad if you're out on the freeway. Right. And it's worse if it happens at night, because you're at risk of lapsing from being asleep to being in a coma. So I said, well, everybody's chasing this. Eli Lilly and et cetera. Nobody's chasing this. Let's go after this. Is it really a problem? So we went off, let's talk to some patients, et cetera. Turns out, what are you guys doing about this? Well, usually what I do during the day is I eat 3 small meals and 3 small snacks and regular small doses of insulin, and I keep that blood. Yeah, but do you wake yourself up 3 times a night to eat something and inject? No, hell no. Well, what do? Well, take a check some insulin, big nighttime snack, and pray that the two work out together. But they don't, because everything in the food turns into glucose at the same time. And the spike is higher, but the duration is no longer. The short version of that is that at 2 a.m., the food runs out, the insulin's still working, and you're at risk of dropping into hypoglycemia. That's the danger zone. Okay. So constant anxiety, but there was a bigger problem. We had, the odd focus group. You guys know what focus groups are? You ever stood on the other side of the one-way glass? Yeah, well, I have, many times. And in a couple of these things, I had a temper tantrum. Well, where the moderator on the other side? I know it surprises you. And I said, we've been talking about this for the last 45 minutes, and now you understand the science. Let's just cut the crap. What's your biggest fear? And I said, I don't think I'll die in my sleep. I don't sleep in bed. I sleep in that recliner. I'm afraid if it gets too comfortable. Okay. So we're no longer talking about avoiding hyperinsulinemia. No, we're talking about not waking up dead. That's different. So we created a nutrition bar, patented the formulation. The ingredients were sucrose, protein, and uncooked cornstarch. It happens to be a birthday cake. But if you use those ingredients instead of diabetes, you're violating my patent. Pretty cool, right? And of course, being a marketer at heart, I declared that this was time-release glucose. Designed, because we wouldn't make a claim, we had to finesse the language, designed to lower the incidence of the one without causing the other. This time it did taste good. Thank you very much. Arm wrestling with the FDA went down to Washington. I really wanted to be able to put on the package for people with diabetes. My customers said, Bob, if you do that, I won't buy it. You care to guess why? Why would they say that? It's a counterintuitive thing.
Label to have.
You talk way too much in this. There's got to be somebody else in the room that's function your brain cells besides you. That was a left-handed compliment. Wow. But somebody else. What's your name? Maddie? Somebody else besides Maddie the genius.
They don't want to be labeled as
Bullseye. That's exactly right. You know him? Well, my compliments. Okay. That's exactly right. They said, Bob, I don't think of myself as a diabetic. I'm a lawyer. I'm a banker. And if I could need this because the conference that I'm sitting in has gone too long, it's nobody's damn business that I have diabetes. I do not want to look like I'm meditating. All right. I'd argue with that. So what should it look like? Make it look like something that an elite athlete should buy. Brilliant. And that we sold some of these things to marathon runners who said, I'm going to be running for a few hours. I could use time to release glucose. Perfectly okay for them. Considered an off-label medication for those of you who belong to the world. So, this time, we went out and we talked not only to the clinicians, but also parents, because we thought our target market was parents with kids who have diabetes. 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. It's a real worry because you only need the EMTs to come to your house at 2 in the morning with the EpiPen once or twice before this kind of gets burned into. We interviewed all of them. I mean, what was going on was they would be in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, both parents standing by Jessica's bed. She's asleep. She's in a coma. I don't know. Wake up. You all right? No, I was asleep. Good, go back to sleep. Right. I mean, it sounds comical, but it wasn't. Right. Well, we interviewed parents. We went to the little elementary school meeting. That those chairs are about this high off the ground. All that stuff. We learned a lot about these customers. We went to support group meetings. We had actually 5 very interesting conversations. We said, write down where you would expect to buy this and write down what you would expect to pay for it. Don't say anything because I don't want your big mouth neighbor influencing you. All right? Send it up. And the answers fell almost perfectly into 2 piles. Grocery store, 25 cents. Pharmacy, $1.25. But now, the distribution channel makes a difference. Call me silly. I like pharmacies. Right? So, found an ad agency that knew something about diabetes and started pulling together really clever ads because most of the ads were huge images of hypodermic needles. Makes you feel warm all over. Right? Because the thrust was my needle is sharper than her needle. It won't hurt as much by mine. Really? Seriously? So we ran ads with like flying pigs, complete for cats, the green, one night, and the rest of TV. I mean, there's a bunch of sort of corny copy in there, but it was eye-catching in the context of everything else. And we stuck a little violator across, you know, call 1-800-US, right? If you'd like to send. Say, well, we got to subsidize this. First, we have to find out if anybody besides those things is a good idea. So when we started getting 100 calls a day, we were a little started there, just a couple of them. So we better get some more phones. 200 calls a day, we said, oh, we better go out in the marketplace. So, do you have a pulse? Would you like a job? Not every one of those hires was the right one, by the way. 300 calls a day, we said, well, these index cards we're using. 500 calls a day, we said, oh my God, I think we're on to something. It's time to train a sales force and do this right. And so I'm going to tell you how I did this. At the end of the story, we penetrated every major pharmacy chain in the country. And the amount of money we spent on slotting fees. Back up. Slotting fees is what they call it when they say, if you want to be on my shelf, you have to write me a check. Why would they say that? Because they would say, well, if I don't put you on my shelves, you don't reach any customers, you don't get any business. That's false, actually. But the fees are onerous. When I started dealing with CVS on this, it was $1 million a quarter, plus 6% of your top line revenues. Plus it was a guaranteed sale, which meant if it didn't sell, they'd ship it back to you for a refund. Plus, but wait, there's more. Plus, you have to put 2 units of each SKU. What's an SKU? You guys know what that is? Stock keeping unit. So if you got chocolate and vanilla, whatever each of those is, 2 of each SKU you have into all 2,400 of the stores that they have for free. And if anybody came along and reordered, they pay you eventually. Right. I said, we can't do that. We got to do something else. And we did. And in fact, we are the subject of an obscure Harvard Business School case study now because nobody had done it. And the obvious lesson is because we understood our customers this time, we invented a better product and we built a success. So, how do we do that? Well, we asked some questions about our customers. We said, how do we, well, back up, I'm sorry. There's a fairly large percentage of people who have diabetes who aren't going to take care of themselves. And they're going to spend money. And it's a waste of my time as an entrepreneur to try to convert. I'm not persuade them on customer acquisition costs. They've got too high. So how do I find the ones who are committed to taking care of themselves and who are spending money to take care of themselves? That's who I want. Ideally, somebody that they look to for advice. The answer turns out to be a credential at the time, and things have changed a bit, but certified diabetes educator. CDE is a credential you get on RN or RD or COMP or whatever it is. They cluster around the major metropolitan areas for their services. And they have as an association, which surprisingly enough is called the American Association of Diabetes Educators. There's a tab on there, locate an educator. You just go, there they are, with all the contact information. So we said, I'll find them. So we said, yeah, we learned some hard lessons, not asking ourselves what our customers worry about. And these people are about to become our customers. What do they worry about? Well, we answered that question, and I'll tell you about it in a minute, but the end result that you should pay attention to is that we had several thousand highly trained sales reps who worked for us for free. I will argue this would be an advantage for most of your business. So, turns out that many of them had monthly meetings with their patients. First Saturday morning of each month or whatever it was. They would walk them through the latest and greatest technologies and interventions. Check in with them. So I called a bunch of them up. I said, what's your greatest professional frustration? You guys are so smart. What was their answer? People not following the directions. Bingo. People, I tell them what to do, and they don't do it. The medical term for which is compliance. I tell them stay away from the hot fudge sundaes. Right? We said, well, what if we had something that was developed by Harvard Med School scientists that your patients will take regularly, they'll love it, and will thank you for telling them about it. Most of them said, well, I'd have your babies. I want more babies. But suffice to say, they were excited. Well, would you tell your patients about it? Absolutely. Now, these people would have been offended if we offered one. They view themselves as healers. But we gave them something they wanted more than money. We gave them an answer to their professional frustration. So there are ways to motivate people to help you. Ask yourself a question that I'm going to ask again in a couple of minutes. Who wins if you win? Who would love to see you succeed? And in fact, we'll help you succeed because your interests and theirs overlap. And it does not require a commission check. But by the way, when you finish these Saturday morning meetings, you probably send them off someplace to like a pharmacy. Why, yes, I do. Your next meeting is in 2.5 weeks. Yeah. Do you have all the content you need for that meeting? Right. Maybe the night before, but no. So, well, if we sent you some of this stuff and some information and you reviewed it, you liked it, it met your professional standards, et cetera, is there a chance you would tell your patients about it? Absolutely. Well, you know, if that works, they're going to have a couple of very predictable questions. What's it taste like? How much does it cost? Where can I get it? You can tell them it tastes like a fudge brownie. That's true. It's $1 a bar, but I need your help to answer the third question. Where do you send them? Well, I usually send them to Jarvis's pharmacy. Is there a chance we could call Ms. Jarvis up and say that she's about to have a flood of new patients come in to buy a product that she doesn't stock? Well, I'll do better than that. I'll call her myself and tell her to get her butt over here to this meeting and stand up and tell people she's got the product. So even better. Did that cost me anything? So I would call Ms. Jarvis up and say, Ms. Jarvis, I've been talking to Jessica, who's running a meeting in 2.5 weeks. She's going to tell a bunch of her diabetes patients about a product that we have that you don't stock. And some of them are going to come to your store afterwards looking to buy it. And you don't want to turn them away. Here's a little tidbit. At the time, 3% of the people in America have diabetes. They're responsible for about 24% of retail pharmacy purchases. If you go in and buy a toothpaste and a greeting card, they come in and buy glucose monitors. So they're high value patients. They don't want to say, no, you got to go across the street. So we say, we're going to make this easy for you, Mary Beth. We're going to ship you the stuff. And if it doesn't sell, you don't need to send it back to us. You don't need to send it to proof. Throw it in the trash. We'll take your word for it and refund your money. So we'll take the risk. Nothing to lose. Fine. And by the way, you're going to get a call from Jessica, who's going to invite you to the meeting, so you can stand up and say, yes, here's who I am. You guys know me, and I'm stocking it. Please come. So this is kind of block and tackle stuff, but it worked. Nobody ever said slotting fees. And we ended up with about 10,000 patients doing it. So our sales model until then had been, we called the educators, they talked to patients, patients would buy from us, we'd make a couple of dollars. We said, but we need to be in the retailers. And if the educators would call the retailers and the patients would call the retailers, it paved the road for when we call the retailers and we'd make more money. But note, this is the new definition of our customer. Okay? So this finding your customer thing evolves as your business grows. So we'd send the stuff to the consumers. By the way, we made some list that said somebody's giving away free fudge brownies.
We got a lot of calls from people.
So we had to ask what in the world of sales. Emma, tell us what a qualifying question is, please. Logan, tell us what a qualifying question is, please.
I don't know that I know the qualifying question.
Qualifying questions include, do you have any money? No. Are you the decision maker? Right. In this case, it was, tell us about the brand of insulin you use. And they said, huh? We said, sorry, we don't have anything for you. Right. Once they made their way through that filter, we'd done them free sample. Right answer, you get a free sample. We call them. And did you get it? Because just because we sent it doesn't mean you got it. Yes, we did. And we learned to ask open-ended questions. Who knows what that is? Dr. Salisbury, please.
Yeah, that's the, where there's not a clear, simple yes or no.
That's exactly right. If I called them up and said, did you like it? And they said, no. Kind of hard to recover. If I called them up and said, what'd you think? And they said, I really didn't like the way it tasted. Okay, what else? Well, it worked great. Okay, what else? Well, I'd like to buy some more. Those are open-ended questions. You do not paint yourself in the corner. We did not know this out of the box. We kind of had to stumble on it because we painted ourselves into a corner a lot of times.
Hey, Bob, real quick for you. Did you guys do a free sample or did you do like a just pay shipping free sample?
No, we paid the first round. I was on a rampage to find out if anybody besides me wanted it and would they reorder. For me, the holy grail in building a business is reorders. You've got reorders, you have identified a need, you have met the need, and you have people who are coming back for more. Now all you gotta do is, sorry?
You can build a brand off that.
Right, we rehearsed this in advance. Jacob and I sit out and said, Jacob, at about 11:30. So the day came when we would call them up and say, aren't you about out? Isn't it time to reorder? And then the day came when we said, wouldn't it be more convenient for you to buy this when you go into your pharmacy to buy insulin? Especially since you're not going to make me pay for shipping. Say, well, where is that? And they say, it's Miguel's pharmacy. Call Miguel. We wait till we have 4 or 5 of these customers and we call Miguel. Now, the way a pharmacist answers the phone, pharmacy, you got about 12 seconds. So we say, Mr. Johns, we have been selling our product for 4 of your patients who have diabetes, and we don't want to sell it to them anymore, and they would like to know which drugstore they can go to buy it. Do you have a minute? Who is this? We'd make our bid. Everybody'd say yes. Now, they would frequently say, well, you know, we can't do this without corporate approval. Well, we know that. We suspect that there's a spending level below which you can buy without corporate approval. And I'm guessing it's $100. Oh yeah, that's right. You'll be pleased to know that our starter kit costs $99.95. Another accident, right? Don't worry, if it doesn't move, throw it in the trash, we'll refund your money. We will take the risk. When we call these customers of ours, this was labor intensive. We would call them and say, Miguel's Pharmacy is now stocking the product. Get your young buns in there and buy it. And then we wait a week or so and we'd call Miguel and say, Miguel, we just want to confirm that you got that stuff. Could you take a look if it's still on your shelf? Well, all right, hold on. He'd go look and he'd say, holy smokes, we sold it already. So we'll imagine that. Shouldn't we set you up on sort of a standing order? And by the way, soon it will be time for corporate approval. Well, in fact, I'm the head buyer for the Bay Area here in San Francisco. I can put you in touch. So off we went. Nobody mentions lottery. And I would have refused to pay him because I would have said, I'm not paying you to build a business. I did that. You're making money from them. Next up, drugstores have about 8,000 SKUs. We do not want 8,000 invoices. The wholesaler comes in with these big Tupperware bins, toothpaste, greeting cards, shampoo, blah, blah, blah. Invoice. If you think pharmacists don't care about healthcare and patients, wait till you talk to wholesalers. But we said, if we really want to get to heaven, we got to get to wholesalers. And make way more money. So once again, we have redefined our customer. Right? I could talk way longer than you want to listen about this, but I'm going to give you a quick flyover.
Were they all your customers by that point? You know, did you redefine your customers in different times? Were they all?
Well, we didn't know the pharmacists when we started selling to pharmacists. We absolutely didn't know the wholesalers. So we had to call the pharmacists. A few of them actually come to the phone. And we had to say, who's your wholesaler? It's McKesson. Who's your friend at McKesson? If we want to call somebody and use your name, who would it be? It's classic networking strategy, which you don't need me to tell you about. Okay?
But you need to continue to tend to your original
Oh, yeah.
differentiators.
Oh, yeah. If our original customer, oh, and by the way, in that regard, our original customer started to go on top and saying, you know, I love you guys, it works, et cetera, et cetera. I cannot eat 7 straight chocolate flavored bars every week. Don't you have another flavor? Well, what flavor should we have? Now we're marketers, right? No, surprisingly enough, the answer was peanut butter. And I used to stock samples of this in the office. And I've had 1 or 2 businesses where nobody in the office would eat the free samples. That was a bad sign. In this case, they were being gone all the time. And I noticed that the staff would take a peanut butter and a chocolate. And I thought, well, there's our 3rd flavor. Right? Again, it's not necessarily easy, but it's really simple. Ask them what they want, right? Okay. I'm sorry.
Very bad thing that you tend to, it's quite difficult, I understand, to change your business model from a B2B to a B2B2C. And you're doing, you're changing who you're selling to. So how, can you say a little bit more, how did you maintain both models? Or did you?
Okay, I should say first of all that we were motivated by desperation because we had these greedy investors. That's probably redundant. Who wanted us to be making more money. And so we had to find a way. But we did, in fact, stop selling direct to consumer. We would say, tell us your zip code, and we will tell you 3 pharmacies near you that are stocking the product. Thank you for your interest in it, et cetera. Are you part of an organization which, I mean, we milk it a little bit, try and get referrals and so forth.
Was that pressure from was that pressure from them? Or was that pressure from the pharmacies? Or was that an internal choice to keep the pharmacies happy?
The pressure to go to wholesalers came from the pharmacy.
I'm sorry, not to direct consumer, not to keep that when you win.
No, they never leaned on us about that.
So that was an internal decision, not pressure from the outside.
It's a reasonable question. Did they regard us as being competitive with them? And I said, guys, we got to pay shipping if we ship from us. And, you know, we lose money every time we do that. I'm willing to lose money in the early stages because I'm validating my customer model. That stuff, right? But they were not worried it would be competitive. Yes, ma'am. 1920. It was a lot.
Were they more local pharmacies or?
No, these were national chains. And in fact, I have a story about that. And Amazon was not at the time forced to do that it is now. And with the last company I had, I didn't bother with the brick and mortar types, purely Amazon. We can build, if you're willing to slog through all of their nonsense. A long time. Yes, ma'am.
Question about, okay, so you're born of desperation, you'd say, but at the time you were giving away the store, right? In terms of,
We were paying for
every
consumer information.
Right.
Inventory.
If you have sort of an internal governor, all right, we can suck up this amount of losses, or we can suck up this amount of time of, what are your governors on those feeding strategies where you took all of those?
Well, it was essentially, we had a small company. And it's no disrespect, I-Corp didn't exist at the time, I was not gonna go interview on it. I talked to 8, 9, 10 people and heard the same thing. Especially if I believed them. And I would sit and look them in the eye and talk with them and say, what are you actually worried about? And they'd say, honestly, I'm afraid I'm gonna die in my sleep. Well, I believe it, right? So when I had enough to make me decide I believed it, I would talk it over with the staff because I have a lot of bad ideas. And sometimes it's useful to have them say, Bobby just had another one. But we'd just make the decision. It was time to go. So we gathered enough information. I think I will skip the wholesaler story because we're going to run low on time. But I will tell you about one kind of funny thing that happened. There was a major chain store that sent us a letter, honest to God, stamp on it. Really? And the contents of the letter were, we are designing our planogram for the coming year. If you want to be on it, you have to come to a 15-minute meeting in Clearwater, Florida. Who knows what a planogram is? Yes, ma'am.
Your display for that section of the store shelf.
Exactly.
And everything that it does.
Exactly. And it's part of why just about every Walgreens or just about every CVS was the same. And if you've ever had the good fortune to go to Bentonville, Arkansas and talk to the people at Walmart, their planograms occupy blocks. I mean, they're huge with the source page. And they spend a lot of time on which things should be at eye level, which things should be down here, all that stuff. So if you want to be on our planogram, you have to come to a 15-minute meeting in Clearwater, Florida. So I called a couple of people and said, what's this about? And who are we going to be talking to? And they said, you're going to be talking to a guy named Jeff, who has a job you don't want, because he's going to be talking to psychotic entrepreneurs, 15-minute intervals every day for a week. So we're right, I don't want that job. How is Jeff evaluated? Jeff is evaluated based on how much slotting fees he can extort from the people who are coming in to see him. And I said, well, this ought to be entertaining. I was feeling pugnacious. So 2 of us went down there and we sat in the lobby. And the lobby was like surface layers. I mean, there are people there and I will walk your dog and pick up your dry cleaning. When our time came, we went in. I said, Jeff, it's good to meet you. This isn't going to be like any of the other in that meeting. We don't have any money and we're not going to get money. What we do is spend 5 minutes telling you who you are, 5 minutes telling you what the product is, and 5 minutes telling you why you want to send it. Well, good times work, knock yourself out. So literally, so the first 5 minutes, second 5 minutes for diabetes, here's what it does to the population today. Third 5 minutes. I think that we've compiled a list of individual patients with diabetes. We've been doing business in the state where you have stores. There's 10,000. All of them have asked us the same question. Which retail pharmacy can I go to buy your product? How would you like us to answer that question? You sat there for damn near a minute. And if you don't think that's a long time. But then he sat up and he said, okay, you're in. Well, thank you. Staged froze and yada yada. I mean, there are a lot of blocking technical issues with that. But what we had, obviously, was customers. Nobody said a word about slotting fees. We had paved the road. We gathered up a group of customers and sold them, metaphorically, to the pharmacy chain. Right? Okay. Business grew handsomely. The reorder rate was over 300 times a year. Consumer packaged goods companies would swoon for a third of that. A lot of publicity. Sold the business to, excuse me, $2 billion pharmaceutical firm. Everybody was happy. Okay. So I'm still in this game, as are you. And some of my experiences have been pain. And in the interest of sparing you some of those pains, tell me what should I have learned from these experiences? And maybe obliquely, what might you have learned? Help you build your next model. What are the takeaways here?
Your customer, know what they will buy.
Know your customer and
What they will buy.
what they will buy. Okay, that's a good start. What else?
Get your customers a vouch for you before you ask them to for something.
Will your customer
Vouch for you.
what can they do to their friends?
Yeah.
Net promoter scores for your social media mavens, right? Okay, what else?
Retention.
Sorry?
Retention.
Retention. Tell me what that means.
Hold on to what you currently have. Thinking about.
Reorder. Right? Yeah.
Even when your customer shifts and that shifts your business model, you still have to focus on satisfying the end user. I would be, an interesting thought would have been, what if you would have just kind of ignored the people who are actually eating these bars once you pushed buying to selling to retailers or wholesalers? They would, yeah.
We had to keep each of our customer constituencies happy. I once missed a delivery window with CVS. They wanted between 10 and 11 a.m. on a Tuesday morning because they did just-in-time inventory. I took such a beating, I could barely walk for a couple of weeks. They were pissed. But we had to make all of the customer components happy. Okay, there's a question. What are they really buying? Well, what are they really buying is worth spending a minute on. What my customers for the diabetes product were buying was security. Right? Finally, I can sleep through the night. Sometimes they would call us and say, how do I know it works? We'd say, well, did you wake up dead? No, it worked. What were they really buying? They were really buying security. What I was trying to sell with the Regain product was virtue. Your blood chemistry would improve. And skincare. Products that are for everyone aren't for anyone. If I'm interviewing somebody and talking about their business, I say, who's this for? It's for everybody. Okay, conversation's over. That's just false. Famous last words. Right? And keep in mind that nobody needs what you're selling. Because as I said here, I don't actually need these glasses. What I need is to see better. Hire glasses. Some of you hire contact. I bet some of you know somebody who hired the LASIK surgeon to, right? We hire solutions to our problems. What I need is the benefits. If you are busy talking about the features of what you have and not talking about the benefits, you are about to lose the sale. Benefits first, then reason to believe. I once was in the weight loss business, and I did a week standing at a table in front of a CVS in Worcester, sorry, Springfield, Massachusetts. It was a 3-week week, it was terrible. But people would come up to me and say, what do you got here? And if I'd start talking about low glycemic index carbohydrates and avoiding hyperinsulinemia, and say, okay, thank you. Finally, when I got this will help you lose weight and you'll never be hungry. They say, Jesus, where do I get it? I say, aisle 7. Joan, don't you want to know how it works? No. Right? Benefits first. And then for those people who want it, a reason to believe. I think if there's one slide in my whole talk that I would love to have you remember, it's this one. It's done. It's customary for marketers to talk about segmenting their market. Most common is demographic. We're looking for women between age 25 and 40, average household income north of $80,000 a year, right? I think for you, and I'm convinced for me, that's the wrong way to segment it. It should be segmented according to who wants what you've got. Motivation. Right? If I have something that will prevent you from having your second heart attack, and yesterday you had your first heart attack and you're still alive, then you are highly motivated. Parenthetically, if you did not survive, then you're not my customer. So the next tier is people who say, that's my brother. We have the same DNA, the same family background. I'm worried. The third tier is, well, you know, I take pretty good care of myself and I'll watch this. But most marketers, and I have done a fair number of deals with large consumer packaged goods companies, they go right here because it's stupid, they say, not to go where all business is. I argue that for you, that's absolutely the worst advice they could give you. I think that's a graveyard. These are people you cannot afford to acquire, you cannot afford to chase, you cannot afford to convert, and call me silly, but start there. Right. So, a couple reasons. First, they're most likely to buy, and second, if you can't succeed here, you don't have a business. Right? And as a sidebar, by the way, I think of you guys as the jockey, not the horse. Many a jockey has picked for their first ride a horse that was not going to make it around the race. If you can't sell it here, you might have one of those. So if you like the horse, put it out faster, otherwise shoot the damn thing and find another horse. Right? That seems harsh, but life is short.
Just a question, you know, a lot of pitch decks, a lot of investor-oriented pitch. And the size of the market, you know, always has to be.
If I sold one stock to everybody in China, it would be. Yeah, I've seen this.
So what's the transformation of the story you tell to stakeholders that are going to help you succeed, whether it's investors or it's the employee you're bringing on that you can't forget, but you need them, if that's what your strategy is?
Let me give you an example. It might not be a good one. It's mine. My most recent business, we invented a 2.5-ounce drink to help you sleep at night. It's just a food ingredients. Good science, it worked. Same question. Everybody on the planet sleeps. Boy, is that an idiotic position. I assumed that my target market, that's not right. We did some thinking, so we got to put some packaging around it. You do your packaging for your target audience, your target audience. Well, this is going to be top down because we don't know what we're doing. So we know that. So we'll just drive a stake in the ground. If it's wrong, we'll fix it. Let's stipulate that our target customer is working mom. Probably one of the hardest jobs on the planet, right? overworked, overscheduled, overcaffeinated, fussy shoppers. They see something that says diphenhydramine, no thank you, back on the shelf. And so like a clean label, that'll be our target. Did the packaging. I can tell you funny stories about going off to conferences of, brace yourself, mommy bloggers that had 99 women and 1 man. Subject for another conversation. We rented a list of 100,000 people who had qualified themselves for this, shop at Whole Foods, willing to accept these things. Just about everybody said no. We were fulfilling these orders from our office because I wanted to know if anybody besides me thought this was a good idea. All these people said no. There was a small group that ordered and reordered and reordered. But call them up. Hi, I make this stuff. I know you. Why are you buying my stuff? And every one of them said in the constellation of answer, I run a marathon. And I find that I do better, I perform better, and I recover faster if I have good sleep. And your product helps me sleep. Oh my God, I've done all this sensitive packaging. I'm taking warriors. New rules. Right? So when I would go talk to investors, it's a circuitous route, I realize. But rather than say there's X billion people on the planet and all of them sleep, which would have been really stupid, what I said was in 2019, 20 million people register for an amateur athletic event. The great majority of them are only competing with themselves. They work out together in groups. They're not interested in beating you. They just want to break a respectable showing. All of them are looking for an edge, and that edge is right in front of them. They'll have better performance, better recovery through better sleep. I have a product that offers a better sleep, and I know how to reach the 20 million customers. A small fragment of the U.S. population, even. I mean, I would elaborate, right? There's one Disney, and I know people kind of Disney, but focus. Anyway, I think you can do a lot of things wrong, get this right, your business will fail. You can do a lot of things right, get this wrong, your business will fail. If you want your consumers to change their buying habits, it's not easy. Pain is quite motivating. Fear is quite motivating. Greed works for some people. Vanity, the cosmetics industry has done a lovely job of that. I wouldn't have paid what I paid for this tie if I didn't think it made me look better. Probably all story. Virtue is a tough sell. So if you're trying to put something out there that says, well, we're going to improve the health of everybody in the community, you ask yourself, well, who cares? Who makes money off of that? And who will pay you money to help them do that? Okay, you can go off and spend a lot of time in marketing classes, and they will provide you with all manner of ways to do multifactorial, variable analyses. I'm going to condense all that into 2 points. You can mail me 10% of the tuition. Find out what your customer wants. Give it to them. Okay. There are a lot of ways to screw this up, but you can apply a lot of sophistication. If you overlook this, you have missed the boat. Pick a market segment or two and that you can dominate for a launch. Where you end up does not have to be where you start. Frequently, it's a mistake to aim for the end of the road. Pick a place where you can pay your bills, you can get traction, you can learn from your relationship with your customers. You know, we need a new flavor, whatever it is, right? And launch there. Think of it as the tip of the spear, and over time, grow the business from that. Now, I had a boss that I never forgave for this, but he used to walk around the office and smack me around and say, Jones, there is no hocus pocus to fix the place of focus. Make him stop. It's true. It's a cliche, but it is true. But it's not sales, it's forensic. You're doing detective work. You're finding your customer. They hire your stuff, figure out what it is, that they want your stuff to do for them, find them, and supply them with what they're asking for.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, it's common, the common mantra is that when you start, you're raise funding, all this stuff, you want to have a, clearly defined exit strategy in place. But what you're talking about is a lot more of like starting with a small group, pivoting. How much of a exit strategy did you have in place when you started these things? And what is the emphasis that you would put on having an exit strategy clearly defined?
I've changed my opinion about this, Jacob, over the years. I used to think it was imperative to begin at the end of the story. And if you did not have a clearly defined exit, what were you doing? And I changed my mind because my experience, and it's limited, so it could be wrong. My experience is that the priority should be to build a great business. And then one day the phone will ring. And somebody will say, have you ever thought about selling this thing? But otherwise, you're distracted. What do my investors want? Well, most of the time, what my investors wanted was wrong. In fact, it was well nigh toxic in some cases. It was stupid. Right? We talked about that last night with you and your question about the inflection points that one of the company. Anyway, I think your priority should be to build a good business, great business even. And I think I have seen a lot, I've seen a lot of failures where people got really worked up about step 7, 8, and 9, and fell right on their face from not thinking about step 1, 2, and 3. Get it moving, find some customers, develop your customer intimacy, know them, love them, pay your bills, grow from there. And then one day the exit strategy will materialize. But my thought. I think I've said all this. And we don't have time to do 30-second sales, sadly. So where do they go for advice? How am I going to reach them? Paint a picture of your typical customer, your first customer. This I find to be very helpful. How do you know they're going to pay for your stuff? How much will they pay for your stuff? By the way, an open-ended question I've often asked is, where would you expect to buy this, and what would you expect to pay for it? Not how do you feel about $3.99? What would you expect to pay for it? And it's your turn. We have a couple minutes. Actually, we don't, but will we stand for a couple minutes with your permission? So we have a minute or two if you have questions, and then I have a simple summary slide. So what would you like to know that I didn't cover? Okay.
When it comes to doing some of that customer research, how do you know if it's enough? It's like, oh, I called 5 people, I got this, or, all the way at the other end, I spent a year and I, found many different segments, and, how do you know that you're kind of there?
I think it's inversely related to tolerance for risk.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. The more willing you are to take risks, the faster you can move. That does not mean you should be careless, but your conversations about 30 people showing up for your prospective purchase, etc. I've seen that over and over again. And we have to spend a year doing our Google ads and our Facebook, this and that. Which I don't think it's all that meaningful beyond a certain point. I think the question is, are you asking the right questions? Have you found the right people who really want what you've got? And if in the course of your exploratory interviews, they start saying, where can I get this? Where do I find this? I've got 3 family members who would buy this. You're on to something. Go and fine tune it along the way. One of the things that drove me nuts about working with the big outfits is they would put these internal hurdles in place. if this product doesn't do 150 million domestically and 500 million globally within 2 years, we shouldn't even launch it. Well, that right there kills every bit of innovation you're going to have. Right there. That simple statement, you may as well shut off the innovation valve. It's not going to happen. You have to be willing to go out, I think, start small, listen to what your customers say. Pivot has become a fashionable cliche. I would rather say refine. And pivot suggests I had no idea what I was doing. I've been there, but refine it a little bit as you ask them, what else would you like? And then grow it organically. I think so. Start small without the lofty expectations up front and say, I want to get this thing off the ground and self-sufficient. Small staff, highly motivated, develop a targeted marketplace approach and go for it and see if you can make it work. Yes.
How much does innovation, your process, rely on kind of your gut feeling and intuition?
How much did it rely on what?
Intuition.
Well, you know, we ran some. I mean, sooner or later, economics rears its ugly head, right? If it's going to cost us $5 to get this customer and the customer's worth $3, that's a bad idea. So, but the analysis usually was part, the intuition was the work. Right? I think we're onto something. Let's run some numbers and see if we can make it work. Every now and then we turn it around. But you know, there's enough other people in the adjacent market. Let's run some numbers, and then if we think what we've got would be appealing, then we'll check. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You are the entrepreneur spirit. Who do you feel like you've surrounded yourself with when you make the success? What other personalities?
Well, they're all on medication. No, I think it's really important to thank you. I think it's really important to surround yourself with people who are better than you are. My job when I would start a business was basically to do everything. The E in CEO was chief everything officer, and then get rid of responsibilities as fast as possible. I should not be doing the accounting. I should not be doing the liaison with the manufacturers. I should not be. I need somebody in here who's better at this than I am. Now, I'm obnoxious enough that I would look him in the eye and say, by the way, I'm pretty good. So you need to up your game here or I don't need you. Which is kind of irritating, but really I would go, well, and it also cuts through a lot of crap because if they get sort of deer in the headlights, look, I probably got the wrong candidate. Also, I mean, we have a whole set. In fact, I had to build the right team. What should a startup entrepreneur be looking for in the people that they hire? Candor, sense of humor, fire in the belly to see the business succeed, collaborative spirit, no politics, no jerks. We use the less polite word, etc. And it's a longer conversation, but I look for good people who really want to see the venture succeed and who are fired up about solving the problem. That's a short answer. All right, summary slide. I know every audience has 2 words that they really want to hear their speaker say. In conclusion. In conclusion. There's only one non-negotiable requirement for your business. You've got to have customers. If you do everything else right and do this wrong, your business will not succeed. You've got to provide something that is important and unique, not to the world at large, but to someone. So figure out who really wants it, not who needs it. That's different. Who wants it? Find them, tell them about it. Take their money. Thank you very much.